So as many of you may know, my all-time favorite Stephen King book is The Dead Zone. My all-time favorite Stephen King book. So for this video, what I'm going to be doing for the first time in my channel's history is I'm going to be reacting to one-star reviews for The Dead Zone, my all-time favorite Stephen King book. And this book can be very divisive. There's some people who, like me, who absolutely love this book, but there's a lot of people who have mixed feelings about this book. Some people love like the mystery aspect of this. They like certain sections at the beginning, but then they don't like when it gets all political towards the end. So it can be a very divisive experience for a lot of constant readers. But what I'm interested in is to see what people say who give this book 1 star. So basically, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be looking at Amazon reviews, Goodreads reviews, and Audible reviews, all 1-star reviews, and see what the people have to say about my favorite Stephen King book. And if you guys enjoy this, because like I said, this is going to be my first time doing this type of video for any book, let alone Stephen King. But if you guys enjoy this, I will be continuing this. I did a poll to see which Stephen King books they'd like me to see, what y'all like me to see, and The Dead Zone was the winner by far. But also Misery is up there, Carrie, The Drawing of the Three. I could do this for several Stephen King books, and I see this being an interesting and enlightening experience. So, with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So let's go ahead and start off on Goodreads. I'm just going to read this straight from my laptop, and I should have left room here for stuff to post so y'all can see that I'm not making this stuff up, I guess. But the first 1-star review on Amazon, let's see what it says. It says, went on forever. Oh boy. First, I just want to say that I love Stephen King novels. So this person loves Stephen King. I think he is a spectacular author, and I have read tons of books by him. However, I absolutely hated this book, and that's in caps. Hated. Here's why. And they list 4 reasons. It was way too long, even for a Stephen King book. I thought it would never freaking end. It's not even that long. It's like 400 pages. It's one of his shorter books. So that's weird. 2, there was no action or suspense or anything worth reading at all. There was just a bunch of pointless words. No. No. Stuff happens. Stuff happens. Number 3, there wasn't enough psychicness for me, which is what I thought the book would be mostly about. I mean, there is a lot of it, but maybe he just wanted more of a certain aspect of it, which I get. Like, some people kind of liked when, I guess spoiler alerts for this book too. A lot of people liked it when he was being kind of a more detective about it, like trying to solve crimes with it, but then they didn't love when it got political towards the end, so maybe this person wanted more of the detective stuff, and he didn't get enough of it. But yeah, I get that, at least. And then their 4th thing, just plain boring and a waste of time to read. Okay, well, a lot of this is just subjective, so it's not like, I don't know. I just completely disagree. They also go on to say, however, I have to admit that the concept of this book is good. I just did not have the attention span to read all the boring parts. Well, whose fault is that? Okay, I'm done with this reviewer. Good Lord. Also, I'm just gonna try to skip a lot of the 1 stars on Amazon, because a lot of these are just like terrible condition, like the book arrived late. I'm like, that has nothing to do with the book, sir or madam. Josh F has to say, 1-star review, about 3 good parts with 200 pages between them. Oh boy. Huge King fan. A lot of these are like, I am a King fan, but... So this person, Josh, says, huge King fan, have been my whole life, and will count on the next King novel I choose to be as awesome as usual. I'll probably avoid the late 70s. He wrote some great stuff in the late 70s. The political environment is choke-worthy. Oh boy. But Dead Zone really should have been a 150-page max short story instead of a drawn-out snooze fest. Okay, well, I disagree. But again, this probably leaned towards like, oh, he loved the beginning of it, but didn't love the direction that it went in, which I understand, but like, I loved it. All right, Charlotte says, could have been a lot better. Very slow read. I didn't find it that fascinating. Like most Stephen King books I have read, listened to, I found it really, really slow and never really got to the point that I didn't want to put it down. Okay, well, that's very subjective. I disagree, of course. I wouldn't really say this is a slow read. I thought it was not, I mean, Stephen King is not a very fast-paced writer, but for his books, it's fairly fast-paced. Like, stuff is going on, and Johnny Smith is doing stuff. I don't know. I disagree with that. Tom Hudson says, boring. Well, you can't get more subjective than just boring. Boring, so boring. I have read many King works, and this one is by far the most boring. Should have been a short story. Oh, this person also agrees that this should have been a short story. Well, there are tons of Stephen King books that are way more boring than The Dead Zone, so I completely disagree with that. Jim Naslam says, his worst book. This book sucked. No opinions other than this book sucked. That's hilarious. I Love Books says, SK Lover, but all these have qualifiers. Like, I love Stephen King, but I love Stephen King and have read countless novels, but this one I just could not get into. I gave the first 4 chapters a run, but lost interest and could not commit to finishing it. Well, you're missing out, because what even, like, the first 4 chapters, like, what happens in the first 4 chapters? Now I gotta look it up. Yeah, another thing, like, there's chapters, but there's also sub-chapters. Like, does this person mean the first 4 sub-chapters? Because that's not very far into the book. But if it's, like, the first actual 4 chapters, like, what's happening? You're just kind of getting to the premise of the book. Like, you didn't really give the book a fair shot in my mind, but, you know, to each their own. Chuck Mingle says, like a dud firework that just wouldn't go off. Oh boy. I loved the television series. I've never actually seen the television series. Probably will never get to it, but this person says, so I thought I would check out the novel. Big mistake. Out of 402 pages, 40 of them grabbed me. The very last 40 pages. Wow, that's kind of interesting. So he really didn't like the beginning of the book, but he liked the end of the book? I hardly ever hear that. Mainly for the anticipation that I was almost done with this piece of garbage. Oh, that's why. Okay. There was virtually no plot involved. Disagree. And what little plot was there was literally squeezed into the end. Sure, there were small portions where Johnny would have an odd flash into something, like the serial killer or the restaurant that burnt down, but none of these things were essential to the storyline. What? No! It took all of my being to push myself into finishing it, only because the show was canceled without a proper conclusion. Probably because the show wasn't very good. So I had to see how the original book ended for some form of closure to the series, which is amazing. Maybe, I don't know. I find myself constantly wondering when the point of the story would come, but it just dragged on along boorishly. Reading this makes me think that anyone could write anything, whether it be good or horribly bad, which, yeah, anybody can write anything. Yeah, he's right. And Signet would publish it. That's what he's trying to say. I feel as if the time I spent reading this would have been better spent banging my head repeatedly into a brick wall. Jesus Christ. Wow, this guy really does not like the Dead Zone. This other person also says, stick to the TV series. So this person also likes the TV series. How in the world can this book get 5 stars? Well, check out, actually, I don't have a Dead Zone review, do I? Well, watch one of these videos and I'll tell you why it's 5 stars. How about that? I enjoy Stephen King material, but, again, another qualifier, I seriously sense biasness from most reviewers. Boring from the beginning to the end, it drags. Well, maybe a few paragraphs here and there are interesting, but in this novel, King is too invested in the passing of time and all of its events and detail that make no difference whether or not it's included. The story could have easily been 50 pages. Everyone is saying that this should have been a short story. Man, you're missing out. Missing out. Then again, the book was written in '79, so I'm sure his style changed considerably. All I know is that I love the series with Anthony Michael Hall as Johnny. Really? He's Johnny, the guy from 16 Candles is Johnny Smith? I might need to check this TV series out. And then the last 1-star review on Amazon, at least, says, A Miss by King. Great idea, badly realized. So, in summation, at least on Amazon, people love the TV series and they think it should have been a short story. And they liked parts of it, but not all of it. So, what did I learn? Maybe I should go watch the TV series, and I don't know. People are crazy. I don't know. I love this book so much. All right, now we're going to jump into, I think we'll go to Goodreads. I'm not obviously going to read all of the reviews because I think there's like 105. So I'll just kind of skim over some ones that look good. But yeah, those were all of the Amazon 1-star reviews. Not that many, so that's a good sign. But on Goodreads, there's a lot. First one that pops up has 9 likes, and it says, so boring. As is often the case with Stephen King, the idea behind this is compelling. The story just needed about half the content edited out. And it's so funny because I often say the same thing about Stephen King books that I don't like. Like The Stand, I'm like, oh yeah, part 1 was great, but then it just dragged on. And then It, I say, could be a 5-star book if it was edited down. So maybe I'm being a little bit hypocritical, but like, it's not even that long of a book. It's 400 pages. Like, there's not really anything in my mind that you could cut from this book that would make it better. Like, if you don't like it, you don't like it, you know? But like, the books that I complain about are just long, like they're 1,000-page tomes and they don't need to be. That's my excuse anyway. And we are in spoiler warnings again. So this other review says, trigger warning, dog gets kicked to death. And that is true. That happens very near the beginning of the book. Greg Stilson kicks a dog to death. Yeah, I can see if you're a dog lover and reading that, that's probably a hard DNF. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you on that one. This reviewer on Goodreads says, this book didn't do much for me, and I'm usually a big fan of the author. This had a decent premise, guy with psychic powers solves murders, and then it just gets cluttered up with a lot of other things. This book would have been fine at half the length with much less of the angst. The secondary plot with Johnny following the politician seems like it belongs in a different book, and desperately needs to be better written. I was with the book up until then, and then it just lost me. I ended up putting it to the side for months before actually finishing it, and doing so didn't give me as much satisfaction as I hoped. So this person at least articulates their feelings a bit more than the Amazon reviewers. But yeah, I often hear that people really like the premise and they really like the first half of the book, but then when it gets to the political stuff, they kind of lose interest, which, you know, it seems to be a trend with a lot of people who don't like The Dead Zone or don't give it 5 stars. For me, I love when Stephen King can kind of switch directions in books. He does that a lot, but I get it when people read a book and they're expecting something and then they get something completely different. Makes sense, but I disagree. But yeah, at least this person articulated it well enough. This is a long review, so go get a snack or just buckle up. This one says, unfortunately, my first Stephen King read is also one of the few books I have ever been unable to finish. So this person didn't even finish the book. This is a review of the audiobook, which this is a good point. Narrated by James Franco. Not my choice of narrator, but I mean, he did a fine enough job. But yeah, I would have went with someone else. With a slow start and monotonous narration, I was pleasantly surprised to hear James Franco change his voice so drastically to make the creepy elements of the book dramatically more so due to the contrast to the normal droning of his voice. So maybe this person just doesn't like James Franco. At this point of the book, however, my pleasant surprise only goes as far as the narration. Midway through the book, the horrific detail of the attacks of the serial killer were beyond what I could cope with in a book written for entertainment. Well, it's Stephen King. You kind of got to know what you're getting into here a little bit. Gruesome rape scenes are one thing. Those alone are horrific enough and something I struggle to read. Involving children and the level of graphic detail goes into, too far. Okay, that maybe I would get, but still, it's Stephen King. I mean, come on. And this person also goes on to say, I pushed through convincing myself that, hey, it's Stephen King. He's known for horror, so okay. I guess now that bit's over and done with, at least the book has escalated and got going finally. Only for a couple of chapters later to find that the case is solved and closed, and we are back to wondering where the heck the story is going, and the monotonous drone of our main character. So I think this person doesn't like James Franco and can't handle a lot of gruesome stuff. So not a good combo to read if you want to listen to The Dead Zone. This next person says, Steven, you're the best writer ever, but this book was straight up terrible. Instead of adding crappy romances and strange spontaneous serial murder plot lines to a 400-page book, you should introduce the main source of conflict before I'm on page 330. So that's pretty funny. And yes, I don't agree with it in this instance, but I actually do agree in another book, 11/22/63, where there's also, he introduces a romance that I didn't like. I would say the romance in this book is fine. Like, I'm not a huge, like, romance, like, if it's a really good romance, that's not really going to be, like, a make or break for me, as long as it's not bad. And I don't think the romance in here is that bad. Like, I think it's fine. The romance in 11/22/63 was just distracting, and I think that book needed to be edited down and kind of more focused on the premise. And the premise of that book is at the start. This reviewer is arguing that you don't really get like the point of the book until the end, which I get people's argument for that, but I just love the whole book in its entirety. But yeah, this review was funny. All right, and this person also says that they loved the TV show. They said, I loved the TV show and watched it in its entirety before I even realized it was based on a book. I should have known how different they would be. It's not like you can string several seasons of episodes from one book. However, I was disappointed in the undeveloped characters and some of the differences that I had grown to love in the show. I may have loved this book without being a fan of the show first, so perhaps the comparison is unfair. I can't shake it though. I recommend the show, but not the book. I've had that happen before where, you either watch the show or you watch the movie and you're just kind of used to that. And then you realize that it's a book and you go back to read the book and it just, you're a little biased and you don't like it as much. Like Jurassic Park, I grew up watching the movie and loving it as a kid. And then you go and read the book and you're like, it's good, but it's not the movie. So I get it. All right, one more random Goodreads review, and then I'll move on to the Audible reviews, which will be interesting. Like I mentioned, James Franco is the narrator. I'm going to hopefully try to pick reviews that aren't necessarily about James Franco's narration, but we'll see if that can happen. Like, I'm reading all of these for the first time here. So one more Goodreads review. Let's see what this person has to say. Never having read King, so this was their first Stephen King book, I thought I would give him a try, knowing he is enormously popular. Hard to imagine why. His writing is appallingly bad, cliche-ridden, clunky plot mechanisms, obvious and embarrassingly stereotypical characters. The idea that this author has written a book entitled On Writing boggles my mind. Man, this person is attacking Stephen King. Oh, sorry, the book itself. It moved too slowly for me to feel engaged. Lots of long, drawn-out scenes which were apparently meant to develop a character's backstory, but in the end dragged the story down. Villains were laughably cartoonish. My first and last Stephen King. Oh, man. I love The Dead Zone, but I don't know if I would recommend it being the first Stephen King book to try. I don't even know if I have a video where I talk about like the 19 books I recommend to start with. I don't remember if I put The Dead Zone in there or not. I don't think it would necessarily be a great place to start with, even though it is my favorite. I don't know, but that sucks that this person just tried a random Stephen King book and they're like, you know what? Nope, not for me. Which, like if I tried, I don't know, like the Tommyknockers or the Talisman, and that was like my first Stephen King book, I'd probably be like, well, this is shit, and move on to something else. But yeah, that sucks. So At least for these Goodreads reviews, a lot of these were kind of more coherent and more thought out than the Amazon reviewers. So yeah, basically people, for what I'm hearing, they think it's too long, which I don't get because it's one of his shortest books. They think it should be a short story, or probably they mean novella, like 150 pages. They loved certain aspects, but they didn't love certain, like some people loved like when Johnny Smith is playing detective. Some people liked the very ending of it and thought the rest of the book was boring. So people are kind of all over the place about that. And people really like the TV show. So maybe I'm interested, because if I think I know who the guy is, it's the guy from 16 Candles. How is he playing Johnny Smith? And I'm also going off of the movie, because the movie is also very good, and that's with Christopher Walken, who does a fantastic job. So I'm just like, 16 Candles, Christopher Walken, something's not, it's just not. But I don't know, I'll check it out. Probably not. But yeah, let's move on to some Audible reviews. So 1-star Audible reviews. The first one just says, did not request. I did not order this book, did not listen, so I can't review it for you. What? This person just randomly got the book and was just like, nah, I'm not gonna. All right, another one. This person gives, an Audible, you can give stars for different aspects. So overall, performance, and story. So they gave 1 stars to overall and story, but they gave James Franco 2 stars for performance. Okay. They say, so many gaps and pointless content. Long and boring. The story drug on and on. Just as it was getting good, the good part would end and go back to boring. So a lot of people think this book is boring, and I completely disagree. All right, and this next person gives a 1 overall, a 1 performance, and 2 to story. So they might like something about the story. Let's see. They said, I regret buying this. I'm a fan of Stephen King and somewhat a fan of James Franco, so I thought this would be a guaranteed hit for me. Unfortunately, the story itself is not Stephen King's most interesting work, in my humble opinion. Still, it could have been an enjoyable listen if read by the right person, but James Franco's dull, flat reading totally... Okay, so this guy just doesn't like James Franco. At least his narration. Does he say anything about, like, the story? Okay, so no, he just doesn't like James Franco. So we'll try to go to another one. I'm trying to find stuff that's not about just James Franco, but this person says, James Franco is the worst to listen to ever. James Franco ruined this experience for me. I was a fan of his, but it is painful to listen to him read. Horrible. Is there anything on... Is there any reviews on here that's not about James Franco? Franco made me want to stop existing. Oh, man. Oh, this person is the opposite. They said, only good thing was James Franco as a reader. So they gave 1 star to overall and story, but 5 stars to performance. So this person loved James Franco. This person just says, I can't get into my issues with this one without spoiling, so I won't. I'll just say the longer it went, the more of a surprise letdown it became. And they gave 1 star overall, but they gave 4-star performance and 3-star story. The math ain't math in there. So many of these reviews are about James Franco and how awful he is. The last one I have for you guys, this person just says, who wrote this? I can't believe this is King. The narration is horrible. The story is slow and not engaging. All right, people. So those were 1-star reviews for my all-time favorite Stephen King book, The Dead Zone. Those were reviews from Amazon, which were not very articulate, Goodreads, which were very articulate, and then Audible, which basically everyone hates James Franco, at least his narration. All right, so what have we learned today about my favorite Stephen King book, and what people who really hate this book, what they have to say about it? Overall, they think it's a divisive book. They think some parts of it are good while some parts of it are bad. They wanted more of a focus, which this book does not really have a focus, I would say. It starts, in one place and ends in a completely different place, which I typically love when Stephen King does that. It doesn't always work, but for The Dead Zone, I think it worked masterfully. It's my favorite, obviously. A lot of people say it should have been shorter, which I disagree with. It's only 400 pages. I think it's the perfect length it should be. But a lot of people say it should be a short story or even possibly a novella, some people are saying. A lot of people love the Dead Zone series. I didn't really see any reviews talking about the movie. The movie is excellent. It's one of the better Stephen King adaptations, with Christopher Walken playing Johnny Smith. And yeah, a lot of people love the series, and I think probably what happened is they watched the TV series and then learned that it was a Stephen King book somehow and then went back and read it. And it's obviously going to be different because this book was written in the late 70s and that show, I don't know, probably came out in the 2000s maybe. I don't know. I've never seen it. So it's going to be different. But yeah, what else? People don't like James Franco. And a lot of the people's complaints is that it's just boring, which is just very subjective. Like, you go to probably any one-star review, probably the main complaint is that it's boring, which, a lot of Stephen King books that I give low ratings, I say it's boring and drawn out. So, it is what it is. All right, definitely let me know what you guys think of these one-star reviews for The Dead Zone. Do you agree with any of these reviews? What do you think about The Dead Zone? It's personally my favorite. I give it 5 stars, obviously. What do you guys rate it? And if you rate it kind of low, or if you really hated the book, definitely let me know. Just give me your 1-star review for The Dead Zone. Hopefully I don't get any because it'd make me a little sad because it's my favorite. But, definitely let me know what you guys think of The Dead Zone. Let me know what you guys think of this type of video overall. Like I said, this is the first time I'm doing this type of video, so maybe I'm doing something wrong, or, give me some advice of how to improve it. And I definitely want to make more of these because this was very fun. A little frustrating, if I'm being honest, but it's probably good content. But yeah, this was a lot of fun to make. And the second place winner, like The Dead Zone by far won. Like, it got like 20 plus votes. But Misery was a very close second. So if I do make another one, it will be about Misery, which is probably my second favorite Stephen King book of all time. And the 1-star reviews for that will probably be very interesting. So definitely let me know if you're interested. Leave a comment down below about that. And that's all I got for you today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, or continue to subscribe for more content. And I have my Patreon link down below. You can support me there for as little as $1 a month. And I have my Amazon wish list if you'd like to buy me a book. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a fantastic day.